Checking everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Orangebloods Modcast. It's a modified version of the Modcast. Our savior, Jason Suchamel, is on vacation this week. In fact, he sent some pictures of where he and his wife are going hiking in Utah. And, if you believe in prayer, maybe say a prayer for Suchamel today that he just doesn't die, because he's literally going hiking in a place that has a sign that lets people know that people die on these hikes all the time. Wouldn't be me.
He said they were going to be hiking through a river and stuff and going through, like, I was like, dude, that sounds. He's like, man, the things I do for my wife. I said, man, that sounds fun to me. Then he shares the photo.
Yeah,
and then my palms started sweating. I was like, no thanks, man. There's no way.
Well, it's funny because Jason will play a little bit of basketball, but he's kind of a bum in general. Like, he just wants to hang out. And when I was with him the day he met his wife, and she was just really sporty, hiker, biker, wakeboarder. Like, she's kind of an action sports girl. And then she met Suchamel, and, all that kind of changes. So when they go on vacation, he has to cater to the needs that he represses over the course of the last 20 years or so. Look, Anwar Richardson, Alex Dunlap joining us here on the Modcast. Do us a solid. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications. Just bang, bang, bang. Hit all of those buttons, or just the buttons that you need to push if you've already pushed several of them. We've got a brand new sponsor today. Yeah, boy. Thanks to Dead Soxy for being a sponsor. We hope to do some stuff with them in the future. But for now, the new sponsor of the Orangebloods Modcast, Mojo Insurance. It may sound boring, right? Oh, God, they've got an insurance. Who's in charge of the Modcast? Now, hey, these guys can help you spend less money on your insurance. Let them do all of the work. You can go to mojoinsurance.agency or give them a call at 210-722-5292. The cool thing is, if you go to the website, they've got a custom form just for OB members or people watching this video, where they will specifically give you an extra set of, special care just for you if you let them know you're from Orangebloods. Multiple Orangebloods staff members are already on board with using the Mojo Insurance. So thanks, guys, for being a sponsor of the Modcast. Fellas, how we doing, man? Everybody's taking some time off in July. I think I just want to start off by, Anwar, I'll go to you first. You're literally getting ready to drive to Big 12 Media Days this week as soon as we're done today. So where's your head at? Is it all Big 12 Media Days? Like, we're creeping up on the start of preseason camp just being a few weeks away. Like, the dead season is almost over.
It's over for me at 1 o'clock. I mean, like, that's, there's no, like, Jason can enjoy that, but I mean, I've got Steve Sarkisian hitting a podium, tomorrow, morning, and then I've got, 5 players, and I got breakout sessions, and so, for me, it's the fun time, play time is over. It is, the last Big 12 Media Days for Texas Longhorn football program, and so again, if the irony of Texas going on a Wednesday as opposed to a Thursday is still something that's not lost on me as far as just getting this whole thing over with. So kind of for me, this kind of starts the beginning of the end of Texas and the Big 12. It's kind of the first of many last that Texas is going to have, this upcoming season. But yeah, I'm Big 12 Media Days starting tomorrow, SEC Media Days starting next week, a little break, and camp gets started on August the 3rd. So, I mean, we're rocking and rolling at this point, for at least I am.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, this gets to be about the time that off-season workouts actually are close to coming to an end. Your key guys go to the Big 12 Media Days. They'll take a week or so break, like right before the start of camp, where it's like everybody goes home, relaxes, does whatever it is that they want to do that they won't be able to do as soon as camp starts, and it's suddenly football all the time. Like, we're almost there. We were literally just joking about Charlie Strong baking the cake and what wasn't baked when he left in 2017. But like the cake for this season is mostly baked. We're almost at the time where we get to two-a-days and it's on from there. And a season that I'm starting to lean into the Kool-Aid a little bit on, War, and that I'm really excited to see this season.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a talent accumulation over the past couple of years. And I think this year has to be the payoff for the growing pains of year one, right? Where no one expected that to happen. Some improvements, obviously, in year two, but some things that you still would want to be differently. I think this is the year three payoff, because it's not the typical, like, in your third year, that's how you kind of judge as a coach. It's like, well, yes, but there's also a lot that Steve Sarkisian's been able to do in his staff as far as having talent. And again, having one of the most, if not the most talented roster in the Big 12. So yeah, I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do with the talent that they do have.
Alex, welcome back from vacation. It's the first time we've seen you since you were able to sneak away a little bit. Now that you're refreshed, you've had a chance to unwind a little bit. You come back. As it relates to Texas football, where's your mind at these days?
Well, I'm just I was just kind of going back through. I'm about to get my column up over on the site. I kind of started with it yesterday, just looking through some of the stuff that happened. It wasn't quite like an Anwar Arch Manning avalanche. It wasn't quite like that, man. But I do feel like I looked back and remember right before I left for vacation, I had a column that Tuesday. That was the 27th. And then on Thursday, my column on the 29th was – you were like, no, let's just use this in the war room, right? And then I had the couple things that we used last week while I was gone and stuff. So the last standalone column I wrote on Orangebloods was on the 27th. And so since then, there have been, six commitments, 3 on offense, 3 on defense. So I'm going through the offensive guys today. I'm kind of writing them up, talking about my thoughts. I'll get the defensive guys up on Thursday. And I'll just say this, man. Like, this looks like like I said, it's not an Arch Manning haul like it was whenever Anwar was gone, man. But I do feel like I did the fans a great service by getting out of here and letting this happen. These are some good players, man. So
are you also taking credit now? Like, what's good for the goose is good for you. If
Anwar gets credit, can I get some credit for these? Come on, man. I feel, yeah, man. I feel good about it.
I'm all chips in with you, Alex. Like, you got to understand, as sports fans and especially fantasy people, like we got all our superstitions of things that kind of work, and so yeah, feeling like, hey, that happened. Like, there's people who stand up, they sit in, Alex. How many people, like, in fantasy, they have their, like, I wear this thing this day, I stand in this corner, I eat this thing, right?
Yeah, I wear the same shirt every Sunday.
See, Alex is his own superstition.
Yeah, man. But yeah, and then just as far as coming into the season and the stuff, I'm with Anwar. It's just starting to feel like we got a couple more weeks where we're gonna have to keep on squeezing what we can out of the turnip here, just getting ready for getting ready for fall ball. But as Ketchum said, it's like it's starting to really feel. I mean, football's in the air. It's like today's the 11th. We only have now, so it's exactly 2 weeks until NFL teams, the whole team is going to be reporting to training camps. That's all on the 25th. The 21st, rookies are coming in. So as far as the NFL, we're 10 days out from things. Like, there's going to be stuff around the sports world starting to happen, starting to percolate. We're coming into the end of this deal. It always feels good in this spot. And as we're going to talk about today, not to give away what the plot of the show is, Catch, I'm sure you're going to talk about it and introduce it well, but I think that you have some visual representations that show, Texas, things look like they're coming together, man. I feel like it's been, as I'm coming back in, sort of refreshed with a set of sort of fresh eyes, looking not only at what's happened in recruiting, but also as we look forward to what's happening this season. There's some things that look like they're kind of coming together, and I'm like Catch, man. I heard him say earlier something like he's starting to come around to. I don't want to say because people will say, well, every year you start coming around to buying into the Kool-Aid.
And it's true. Like we're self-aware of that, I think.
Yeah. But like I always said, never again. Yeah. So, I'm sure that we'll get into all of it here on the Modcast.
So some of this we talked about yesterday on the Monday Overreaction Show. It's a little bit of continuation. Alex, I don't know if you've seen the graphic, so I want to give you the full backstory to this conversation. Blake, if you can pull up the Super Blue Chip graphics from yesterday, I just want Alex to see it for a second. I want to set the full context of what I want us to talk about. Alex, if you look over at the left-hand bar, the left-hand column, this is 5 stars, high 4 stars, and consensus elite transfers, which really make up like 1 or 2 per team. It's not a big deal. It's mostly 5 stars and high 4 stars. Texas was 10th a year ago with 9. They've climbed up to 5th in the country in Super Blue Chips with 15. And Alabama, Georgia, A&M, and Ohio State have all come back to them a little bit. They've drifted back. If you look over at the trending section on the right, that's in the last – this does not include 2024 commits. It's just guys that are on campus right now, scheduled for August. Texas and USC, as you can see, are basically the only 2 schools in the country that are spiking up. But Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, A&M, Clemson, because of a combination of NFL losses and transfer portal stuff, their numbers are significantly down from where they were a year ago. For instance, A&M had 24 last year, which would rank above Georgia this year if they had the same roster. So you can take that down now, Blake. That was the backdrop of what we talked about yesterday, which is kind of this evolution of the Texas roster and what Sarkisian's been able to do. And like, they're very close to legitimately, if the talent weren't so young, we'd be talking about this roster really competing for a playoff spot and not blinking based on where it fits in the national landscape. Yesterday, somebody asked me what the so after looking at those numbers, someone said, hey, what did the 2005 national championship team have in terms of Super Blue Chips? Okay, so Blake, put the new graphic on the screen. That led me to going down the rabbit hole of looking at the number of blue chips at every team since 2005, because I couldn't just do one thing. I had to do 18 years worth of things. And what it does, it shows you under Mac Brown how steady and consistent the numbers were from 2005 through 2013. They were in double digits every year. You can see this. You can see the collapse. First year under Charlie, it drops. Second year under Charlie, like it drops bad. It stays there all the way through the Charlie Strong years. You can see where Herman started to build it back up. You can see where Herman loses his job. And then you can see where Sarkisian going into year 3. There are more Super Blue Chips on the roster right now with 15 than there were on the national championship team in 2005, 14. So, Blake, you can bring that down. I think we can pop it back up there later, but I wanted to show everybody the numbers. Just how excited, given the content we're talking about this upcoming season. The roster is so young, but man, Alex, it's hard not to be excited about where this program is trending. The data points really tell a story about where the program was and where Sarkisian on paper kind of has it now. And it only adds to the buildup for me this season, what it should be, what suddenly feels like a disappointment or a disaster. There's just a lot of things to think about with the volume of talent that Sark has been able to add.
Man, you can't even log on to Twitter these days without seeing some infographic or some meme from Sports Nation or Fansided or PFF or anything like that where Texas was voted among some council that they have or something like this about college football, about being the most dangerous team, the team to look out for this year. I'm not sure that Texas is going to be sneaking up on people the way that we would maybe think. I think honestly, with us as people who watch this program so closely and who have come to have been humbled by the way this team has underperformed relative to what we had expected in these previous years. I think that we are sometimes reticent or hesitant to make those kinds of proclamations just from our side, because for one, it sounds like homerism, and for two, we've been burned by it before, and we follow the team so closely that sometimes we get in this echo chamber and in this bubble, and it's really hard to separate what's true from what feels like hype or feels like fluff or feels just like a result of being overexposed to these players and talking ourselves through all these various scenarios, right? One thing that just becomes very clear to me when you showed that thing is that when we were talking ourselves into these scenarios, when Charlie Strong was here, or even when Herman was here, we weren't talking ourselves into these scenarios based on the fact that there were actually really good super elite players on the roster. We just weren't. And I don't remember during that time when Charlie was here ever thinking to myself, man, this roster is terrible. I mean, it is terrible. I thought to myself sometimes that maybe it's not up to snuff as to where it should normally be, right? But I never thought to myself that this is legit terrible. This is really, these players are really, really bad. Did you think that, Catch? Like, was there ever a time when Charlie was there that you thought to yourself, man, Charlie's a good coach, but golly, these players are just all so bad.
They were not good teams. And the thing is, this is at the beginning of my awakening with recruiting data. This is me realizing, oh, you know what? 4 stars, they're not all the same. And so, Charlie recruits the number 11 ranked class in 2015, and I think it was 12. It was 11th or 12th, or either 12th or 11th in back-to-back years in 2015 and 2016. But there were only 3 super blue chips in both of those classes combined, and 2 of those never played a game for Texas. One of those was the offensive lineman Patrick Hudson, who transfers from Baylor and health reasons just never was able to step on the field. And then the other one was Eric Fowler, the 5-star out of Manor, who Anwar and I had a conversation about recently on one of our shows. And the other one was Maalik Jefferson, and that was like it. And the quarterback play was bad. I mean, when you look back at it, there were a lot of signs. The O-line play wasn't good. The quarterback play was atrocious. And they were, not a lot of NFL players. And the NFL draft would tell us not a whole lot on the roster.
No, I mean, but that's not entirely true. That's not all entirely true. I never thought to myself that these players are just bad. Like, Holton Hill wasn't bad. He plays in the NFL. Maalik Jefferson, Chris Warren played in the NFL. Chris Boyd plays in the NFL.
Chris Warren played in NFL preseason.
What?
Chris Warren never played in an NFL game.
Well, I mean, with the Raiders, he was on the 53 for a little short minute.
No, he got hurt in the final game of the preseason, and
he had a great preseason. But
he led the preseason in rushing. He got hurt, and then the next year came back, and nothing ever happened to him. It just faded out.
I think he might have been on their IR for a year.
Yeah. Chris Boyd currently in the NFL. I'm just trying to think Vahe, Deshaun Elliott currently in the NFL.
Charles Omenihu.
Charles, Connor Williams. I mean, it's not like these were super. I'm just maybe I'm crazy. I didn't ever look at these teams. Like, that chart surprises me a little bit. I never looked at those teams and just said wow, these aren't good. From a recruiting standpoint, these aren't good players, and we know recruiting does matter for this kind of stuff. To me, when I looked at that visual representation, can you put that thing back up, Blake? Can you put that thing back up? so I can see it. Like that is miserable. The 2015, 2016, 2017, all that, to some degree 2018. It's like that is talk about a low watermark. And to me, to think that maybe during those years we thought that, some of these players have come in, they've looked good, they've looked better than expected. These are good players that we could talk ourselves into maybe these teams being good. I mean, in hindsight, thank you, Blake. I wanted to just
point. Well, leave it up there for a second, real quick, because when Alex is done, I want to make a point.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, like in hindsight, of course they weren't going to be good. Of course they weren't. It's just wild. I mean, it's a very revealing bit of data you've put together there, Catch, and I would imagine you've gotten some help from Blake with kind of the visual representation here. Because
yes.
Blake is very good at that stuff.
But I Catch, I'm putting a stamp that I want to make a point after you make your point. So I
was just going to say, if you look at the graphic, we were talking about this just before we went live. If you look at 2017, so Charlie's out, Herman's in, Texas has 2 super blue chips on the roster. And Alex says, well, who were the 2? It was Maalik Jefferson and Gary Johnson, 2 players at the same position. And in 2017, Gary Johnson barely played because he was kind of the backup to Maalik. Like by the end of the year, Alex, if you'll remember, they started to get him on the field a little bit more, but that was a team in 2017 with 2, and they mostly just played with 1 for most of the year. You might actually have to give Tom Herman a little credit and say that one of the best pieces of coaching that's been seen on the 40 acres in a long time was that first year to get them bowl eligible to win the bowl game. In retrospect, not terrible because he inherited a mess.
Yeah, I was just look, man. To me, it's very representative of where we are right now, and it gives me more confidence on top of the confidence that I already have, and maybe I'm trying to come to terms with the fact that I cover this team so closely. I watch these players so much. I tend to, whether I like it or not, I have to acknowledge my own biases. I tend to kind of try and see the best in them. You know what I mean? And in doing so, it can blind you a little bit to what the realities are. Like a graphic like that really, really shows you, like what we just saw was the objective reality. And whenever you put that together with just the narrative reality that we've put together as the way that the Big 12 looks this year, the quarterbacks that have left, the key playmakers who have left, like all the rest. Whereas Texas, it's like everybody is now just ascending into the spots that should be their big spots before they move on. It's a lot to put together. And as you said, Catch, earlier, it brings a whole new focus onto like, what should the goals really be? What should the goals really be this season? What constitutes success and what constitutes failure?
So for me, I think the graphic it doesn't tell the whole story. I think it tells only a portion of it, but I think there's something that's missing out on that graphic for me, which is, maybe Texas didn't have a ton of super blue chippers, but if you compare that Texas number to other people in the Big 12, that should be the comparison to. How many did TCU have? How many does a Baylor have the year that they won it? Like, the 2 times, different times, 2 times that TCU has been there, whether it's 2014 or whether it was 2022 last season. Like maybe there's an OU thing in there where, when OU had their stretch of winning Big 12 championships, and maybe that it's something to that effect, right? And maybe OU had some more, but Iowa State, when they come out of nowhere and Matt Campbell is leading that team, those guys aren't full of of this super blue chip thing. So for me, I hear it and it makes sense when we're talking about Texas compared to other programs across the country. But I always feel like this is why I always kind of bring the conversation back, because I feel like in Texas, it's always a comparison of where's our class ranked versus the Georgias and Alabamas of the world and so on and so forth. And that's great. But then when it comes to actually competing in the Big 12 and trying to win a Big 12 championship, we see this team get basically out-coached by people who have, quote unquote, less talented guys on their roster. So for me, it makes sense. But and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the numbers, but I also think there's another component, which is Texas has still had more than enough that they should have won more than one, won a championship, a Big 12 championship since 2009. Like they should have been to more than one Big 12 championship game. And I don't think it's the blue chip prospect of it. I think there's been a coaching aspect that's been missing more importantly.
Well, Anwar, I think you're right. First off, but I think what the data tells us, and why we even have this conversation of super blue chips, is what the data tells us is that the remainder of the roster, the recruiting rankings that come with what's below that are inflated to get people to spend money to care about recruiting. But statistically speaking, the difference between a 4-star and a 3-star is pretty slim margins. Now, we hype it up and we talk about it in terms of recruiting in ways I think the industry does. I certainly don't, and people get mad at me now because I've taken some of the fun out of recruiting by pointing out that, a guy who's a national 250 guy is the same as a national 750 guy. But, we put shiny rankings on kids and it makes fans think they're really important. The reality is the Iowa State roster and the Texas roster for some of those years, like 2017 is a good example. There really wasn't much of a difference between their rosters. The difference is that Texas has a slight statistical advantage in terms of talent, where these other schools, slight, mere percentage points in terms of what they statistically develop into. The other schools had better developmental programs that allowed them, when Charlie, as bad as Charlie was at Texas, he was sensational at Louisville. He took 3-star guys and developed them into NFL players at rates that other schools weren't developing 5-star prospects as. In a lot of ways, what we saw Charlie do at Louisville, nobody's ever replicated, ever. I mean, trust me, I know the numbers. Like, it's crazy how good he was at Louisville. He was a developing machine. What we've seen in Texas during the majority of that time frame, including in the early part of the decade onward, when there was still a lot of super blue chips on campus. They weren't developing the talent. It wasn't getting better once it got on campus. It was a thing that stayed inside the program for more than a decade. And it's the thing that has kept this program from getting over the hump. They haven't had great coaching. They haven't had great development. And so one of the things that we're still talking about with Sarkisian going into this year is the coaching and the development at the level that Georgia and Alabama and the best programs in the country are at, because the talent would indicate that if the development and the coaching is there, this team should be really, really good. If it's still lagging in that department, that's how you get Texas A&M going 8-4 last year with the third best roster in college football. And they just looked like a mess all season long. That's how that happens. So if you're better than Jimbo Fisher and his staff were a year ago, you're playing in major bowl games. If it lags behind, you can get what we saw from Texas during the 2010s and from A&M a year ago.
Yeah, but in this conversation, you've got to just be better than Sonny Dykes and his staff.
The Sonny Dykes' roster wasn't nearly as far behind from a talent standpoint than a Texas or Oklahoma as we all are programmed to believe.
Well,
I think they will be now. I mean, it will be now, right?
It was a 5-win season that they had. So, I mean, and there's Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. I would imagine that over this time frame that we're talking about, your super blue chip time frame, go past time, whatever. If we compared it to the super blue chips on everybody else's roster in the Big 12, it would probably be, 100 times more than most majority of these programs, especially the ones that have had the success. The Baylors who have come out of nowhere and had success, twice. Whether
they're developing their talent better.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like the number, it sounds good, but to me, there's that component of, yes, that sounds good, but Texas has had more blue chips than the teams that they've lost to year after year after year. So at some point, that coaching component, development component, that's the thing that's going to matter, because Texas has always had talent. But more so,
the big question is, do we think they have it now? Because what happened for the last decade doesn't matter anymore. What matters is they have the 5th highest amount of super blue chips in the country, that means that the raw talent on the roster is at the highest that it's been on campus in over a decade. Real quick, Blake, put the graphic back up there. When you see the graphic, you'll see that started in Charlie Strong's first year in 2014. That's the first year they dipped under double digits. Almost an entire 8 years goes by. They never hit double digits again. Now they're in double digits. Now they're at the level that they were when they were playing for national championships. It's young. You can take the graphic down now, Blake. The question is, do we think Steve Sarkisian and the coaches that he currently has on campus, do we think they are at the level of coaching and at the level of developers that this doesn't end up in 5 years being a story of fool's gold, right? In 5 years, we're doing a Modcast, and it's like, remember back in 2023 when we thought Texas was finally back among the elite in terms of elite level prospects on their roster? The question isn't what happened in the last 10 years. Alex, I'll come to you on this. Do you believe that this coaching staff is at the level that we're not going to be looking back at this as some bad cautionary tale in 5 years, fool's gold, that the winning is truly about to begin?
Yeah. Well, I think so, but that doesn't mean I can't be wrong. Doesn't mean because we haven't seen it from I hate to say it, we haven't seen it from Sark yet. We're believe it or not, we're still betting on the come with this guy as an on-field coach. And that's the fact of the matter. I'll put my chips on the fact that he's going to be good. We haven't seen it yet. He hasn't been good at Texas. That's just true. He hasn't been good. He's been okay. He's been kind of bad once. He's been okay once. He hasn't been good. So there's that. We're betting on the come with him, but the recruiting is there. You've seen what he's done at other places. And if you are to believe what people, and I talk to coaches, if you're to believe what people say about Sark and the way that he does work with quarterbacks and everything, if I'll tell you, as somebody who analyzes this offensive line more closely than anybody who's not on the Texas football staff, what Coach Flood has done has been nothing short of unbelievable and just remarkable. It's like the development that we've seen along the offensive line has been, you can take case after case after case, and it's just, it's been objectively outstanding. So if you take those two things on offense, clearly the two most important things, offensive line, quarterback, you have somebody that's basically renowned in the football world as being a quarterback guru and somebody who can, dial things up schematically. He's tied at the hip with the best offensive line coach I've ever seen in college football. That's pretty, that's pretty hard to argue with offensively. I think on defense, there's probably some easier things to pick apart. But as far as the offense, man, from with those two pieces in place, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be at least somewhat optimistic that there, will be continue to be improvements on offense and on defense. I guess I do have some worries in a couple spots, but I've talked about it before. I feel like there's strengths at every level of the defense as well. So as far as the coaching angle, though, I mean, that's my take. It starts with Sark himself and then also Kyle Flood.
Anwar, do you believe in this staff?
I believe in the potential of this staff. So I know potential is always a word that no football coach likes, right? But I believe in the potential of them because they're recruiting at a high rate. They seemingly I've seen improvements from certain guys at certain positions. When I look at like last season, and like that the questions that we had at linebacker and what that was going to look like, and at the end of the year, it was kind of like, okay, there's actually a little bit on my end, so maybe I turn it down. But at the end of the year, felt pretty good about the linebacker position, right? There was a lot of questions, and I don't think we've ever questioned them from a talent standpoint for the most part. Like, I feel like I've questioned where the talent is or has been. I don't question that anymore. I don't really question recruiting, at all. And so for me, it's the final component, which is, Steve Sarkisian started to build something at USC that he was never able to finish. It's almost like it's mirror image of it, right? It's trying to get it built at USC, have a number one recruiting class, and it's almost like Steve Sarkisian finally gets a chance to finish what we never got to see, at USC. Like, this is it, right? This is it. It's almost mirror, image. And so now we get the chance to see, okay, what does this look like when you've got the number one recruiting class, you're the toast of the town, and everyone wants to play for you, all that kind of stuff. That's what we get to see, coaching continuity, like all these kind of things. So that's why I said, I believe in the potential of it. Everything is on the table, but do we have to see it? Like, at the end of the day, I'm kind of like it with Alex. You want to see it a little bit before you just 100% just give the blind. I'm co-signing on it, but I mean, so I believe in the potential of them.
I think you both nailed it, like, perfectly. There's literally nothing else that can be added. I think y'all both summed up kind of where we are, and it actually leads us into a transition into, like, maybe the final thing that we'll talk about on the Modcast today. And you know what? Hold that thought. There have been a couple of super chats. Let's just knock those out so the guys don't feel like we left them from behind. Jordan says, ask Sark. I know you can't say it, but blink twice if Colin Simmons or Kobe Black are silent commits. That's so funny. I wish I'd come to it earlier. Really good use of the super chat there. You got a great laugh out of Onward. Nice job.
That is hilarious.
We'll see if Onward does that while he's at the podium. And Buck Wild says, Strong did kick a lot of players off the team. How many were super blue chips? A couple. Kendall Sanders was one. God, I'd have to go back and look at it. Kendall Sanders, I can't remember when I think Caleb Jones happened just before. There were a couple. There weren't a ton that he kicked off, but there were a couple.
What about Alex? What about the guy you were asking Strong about every single week, the offensive line?
Desmond Harrison. He wasn't a super blue chip, was he?
Okay,
No.
I was curious.
He had tools though. Even the
He
NFL
was
thought he
very
had tools.
toolsy.
He was a starting left tackle for the Cleveland Browns for like 4 weeks, man.
No, I know. I mean, in the end, you were more right than you were
vindicated.
wrong.
You were vindicated.
You were vindicated. So when we look at this team, Alex, I'm going to come to you with this question because Anwar and I did discuss this thing yesterday. I just think it warrants continued conversation. The Longhorns have twice as many super blue chips as Oklahoma. Nobody else from the Big 12 is on the list, which is the point that Anwar will constantly bring up. Like, look how competitive these things are, and you're telling me there's a big talent advantage. It's bad if Texas Fill in the blank. Texas doesn't win the Big 12 in 2023, and you would use the following word to describe what that means.
Deflating. I think maybe just very deflating. I'm not sure that is disaster too much.
Maybe,
apocalypse.
But like,
I mean, I think
it's a D word of some variety.
They got to win, man. They're in the spot right now where they got to win. You can close your eyes and you can just look down the rosters of these other teams. You know, you could talk about the Kansas State. You know, they lose. Just they so many guys that you fear, right? They lose like so many of these guys that you like. Deuce Vaughn for Kansas State. Deuce Vaughn is gone. King Felix is gone. He was a first-round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at TCU. Quentin Johnston was a major problem. Kendre Miller, major problem. Steve Avila, major problem. You know, the corner, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. And the safety. You look at Iowa State. You know, you have now Xavier Hutchinson gone. You have, I mean, and I'm forgetting guys, but I'm thinking about all the players that you kind of strike fear into your hearts when you look at these other teams, right? And so many of them are gone. A lot of these quarterbacks are gone. Duggan's gone from TCU. Like, Texas is in a spot where it should be ascending. Texas is in a spot where a lot of these teams are going to have to figure out what they're doing, rebrand themselves, create new identities. Texas is in the spot right now where everything that Steve Sarkisian has worked for is now coming into fruition. Things have fallen into place. And they've fallen into place at the exact time in the final year of this inferior conference to one that they're going to be moving into and having to really show their wares in 2024 in the SEC, right? You can't write up a better script for this thing for this to be the year where they finally get over the hump, give themselves some momentum going into the next season. Doesn't that seem like the natural order of things? If the world worked in the natural order of things, that's how things would go. So if that were to not happen, I would say that it felt, I mean, honestly, it would feel unnatural. It would feel deflating. It would feel like something. And when something feels unnatural and weird, those are like, if something feels unnatural and weird in your body or something like that, what do you do? You have to investigate it, right? You don't just let it fester. Like you need to like investigate it, bring people in, talk about it, say like, well, everything was just right. Why did something unnatural happen here? Why did the thing that, you know, was the most likely outcome, you know, is say like in your body, just say like my continued health or whatever. Why did something get thrown off here? What messed up that equilibrium? It would take investigation. It would take a lot of soul searching from a guy like Sark to say like, what happened? Like what happened? It was all right. Like I had it right there. What happened? I think it would take a lot of investigation. So, I mean, unnerving, unnatural, deflating. Those would be the words that I would use.
Onward. Hold on. Dez is in the chat trying by every means he possibly can to tell everybody to put their foot on the brake.
He's got to take the part of Jason.
He's filling in for Jason.
Hold on.
Hey,
can I give you my answer?
Tap the brakes. I like this team as much as you guys, but come on, listen.
Dez, we may not agree, but we do see you. Go ahead, Anwar.
What I agree with everything Alex said, and I just will add to it. I think it would be the most disappointing season since the 2019 season. And if you think about the feelings and the emotions after that 2018 Sugar Bowl, where everybody thought they had it, right? They thought they had the coach, which was Tom Herman, because it's all coming together. They thought they had the recruiting class. I know if people have short memories around here, Tom Herman had 2 top 5 recruiting classes, right? So you had the recruiting class, you had the coach, and then people thought they had the quarterback. Sam Ehlinger was supposed to be the next thing since, you know, Colt McCoy, right? And he was going to be the next thing, that great thing. And so the expectations heading into that 2019 season was that this program is about to take off. because all the components were in place. The foundation had been laid. The cake was ready to be taken out the oven. And then that ends up being an 8-win season. And then at that point, it was deflating at that point because you thought it was here. It was going to happen. That's why I say I think the emotions and the letdown would be similar, because from the letdown perspective, Tom Herman really never recovered, after that. Like at that point, the recruiting started to kind of taper off. The belief in him started to taper off. The people who praised him for being Mensa and so smart were now shitting on Mensa and making fun of that. The binder was no longer a cool thing to talk about, right? Now all of a sudden, every time he said something about the punter, the kicker, he was condescending. Like everyone who thought he was cool when he was condescending with the media, when now he's an arrogant prick who's throwing middle fingers. Like everything they excused at the beginning was no longer excused. That would be, I think, the end result. Like any excuse that people made for Sark in the beginning, that's when it turns and on you if you don't reach that kind of level of expectations.
Or it's like they say, it's kind of, I'm not sure it's a perfect analogy, but it's like they say, like whenever you get married and like you're kind of like in love and you're in the honeymoon phase, and there are little things like that the other person has that you just think are little cute, like peccadillos that are just, quirky parts of their personality and stuff like that. And the minute the honeymoon phase ends and you get in a little bit of, start getting in some fights and stuff like that, man, those little quirky things that they do just start bugging the hell out of you, right? You don't see them as the cute little quirky things anymore, man. Those are the things that drive you crazy. It's kind of that's it feels like that's the way that the fan base kind of turned on Herman there.
Well, yeah, and we saw with Charlie, right? The Florida Five, everyone thought it was great. Look at Charlie; he's going into Florida, getting those guys, and at the end, they're like, "That was a waste." Like everyone thought, kick those guys off the team. That's really good, Charlie. Go ahead and do that thing. And by the end of the day, like he was the Michael Scott of coaching. So so it happens, and I think that would be the letdown and disappointment. And again, I'm just saying, going in 2019. Expectations were high. LSU was in week 2. We didn't know LSU was going to be one of the best teams in all of whatever. Now we look back and say, there's a week 2 there. That letdown, I think, would be similar to the 2019 feelings.
Anwar, the interesting thing about that is it's a fantastic warning sign, right? So for all the biggest downside to a disappointing season this year is that the last time things set up almost exactly the same and it didn't happen, the program couldn't hold the rope, right? I mean, Tom Herman would probably tell you what I needed to happen was for the fan base to, like, my super blue chip numbers were climbing, and they were, like, lost in what Sark is doing is that Herman had elevated the program out of the Charlie wilderness. I mean, in his final year, he's sitting at like 9 super blue chips, and they're like one big recruiting year away from being able to like jump up a level. It didn't happen. The fans got disgruntled, and I'm not saying they weren't rightful to do so. The pandemic happens. Eyes of Texas happens. It's over. Right. And so enter Sark. But I'm sure Tom Herman in his heart of heart believes he was closer than people knew. And they had that 2019 season. And you're right, people were so jacked that the fall down from that, the high was so high that when they sobered up, it was a bad headaches. And that's what Sark has to make sure doesn't happen this year, right? I mean, it can't be what that 2019 season ended up turning out to be. And it's funny, yesterday, Alex, look, in a year from now, Texas is going to probably not only have a top 5 super blue chip roster in America, which it already does, but they're going to be older. Right? Those freshmen and sophomores are going to be sophomores and juniors. A lot of those guys go pro after 3 years. So you have to take advantage of them when they're sophomores and juniors. That's next year.
Mm-hmm.
Starting next year, if you have a top 5 roster and you don't make the top 12 in the playoff, you've had a bad year, right? Like, it's one thing to not make the top 4 with a top 5 roster, but starting next year,
2024,
if you're not in the top 12, you've failed.
Are you talking 2024?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll expand to 12 teams making the playoffs.
Well, right. And do you know what the narrative becomes then? You're in the SEC. You're a blue blood. You have all the resources in the world. You have the recruits. You have everything, and you don't live up to the hype, and you can never get there. It becomes a pre-Kirby Smart Georgia situation, and people start thinking about Texas like that.
But the question I wanted to ask you, where I was leading with all of that, is this. Texas does have a top 5 roster this year on paper.
Right.
So it's very easy to define next year what the bare minimum should be. What's the bare minimum this year?
Next year being 2024.
2024, the bare minimum will be finish in the top 12 and make the playoff, or it was not a good year. Period.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I say what you do, the bare minimum for me, bare minimum, get to the Big 12 championship game. We know that in any given game, the ball can bounce funny. Things can happen. I mean, I would say the bare minimum is to win that thing, right? To take care of everything that you can control, right? To take care of everything that you can control. I think it's hard to make that the bare minimum, right? I say to take care of everything that you can control to get to the ultimate goal that you need to proceed on to the even bigger goal, right? The bigger goal being the college football playoff. I think at minimum, you got to get there. I think it's pretty close to saying minimum, you got to win. And then we all know if you do get to the college, I think if you got to the college football playoff at the number of teams that it is for the 2023, I think once you got there, it's kind of like you're playing with house money a little bit. Everyone knows any team can meet up with any team. So
once you get to the top 4, you're playing with – it's a fast – I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because it's such a – I'm not saying that you're wrong, Alex. It's just kind of absurd to hear us say it out loud when we just haven't seen this program anywhere near that.
Well, but I mean, okay, all right. So do you think it's less absurd to say once you get to the Big 12 championship, you're playing with house money?
What do you think, Anwar?
I think starting in 2024, a conference title is meaningless. I think it holds as much. Alex, I said this with Ketch the other day. I think conference titles, Alex, go the way of winning your division in the NFL. No one cares who won the AFC South 2 years ago. Like, no one's going to care about who won the AFC North 3 years ago. Like, those are cool banners to have, but who cares who won, like, the NFC East 4 years ago? Like, it just becomes like, what do you do in the playoffs when it matters? To me, I think that becomes your ultimate judge. And I think the conference title, now maybe one begots another, right? So maybe by going to the conference title, you already go to the playoffs potentially. That's a potential thing. But being a 9-win team and going to the conference title game probably doesn't get you in the playoffs. So more than likely, to me, the bare minimum of success, to me, I don't care about the banners, right? I remember one time I was covering the Detroit Lions and they won their conference and they hung a banner. And it was like one of the most embarrassing things that I've seen an organization do. And I understood Detroit needed something. So
division titles, man, come on.
It was like a 2011, 2002. But here's the thing. Jim Schwartz had said like the year before that we'll never celebrate division titles around here because that's not what I'm here for. And the next year they hung a title. So of course I had to ask him about it. He's like, well, things change. So that's how I just think. I just think that's why I think, Alex, it won't mean anything when it's all said and done. Because if you win your conference title in 2024, and then the wild card team goes ahead and makes it to the Final Four, you're literally just holding this empty trophy that no one cares about.
No, but I mean, you did what you could, right? You won the Big 12, you conquered your division. It's not like, and that's the kind of thing that I agree with you, Anwar, that nobody cares NFC East 3 years ago, right? Nobody cares, right?
Anwar, I just had an epiphany.
But
go ahead. I'm
sorry. Can I just say this one thing? In recruiting, you got to use everything that you can. And with the momentum of the team and with the psyche of the team, you got to use everything you can. It just feels like to me, specific to 2023, right? Specific to 2023, the last year in the Big 12, we ran the conference. We got to the Big 12 championship. Hopefully we won the Big 12 championship, right? If you're Texas, right? And you want that narrative formed coming into the spring, coming into the next year of recruiting, saying like, look, we're on the right trajectory going into the SEC. I think that the narrative doesn't mean much to the average fan outside of the biggest super fans, right? I think it would matter to this. So to a lot of people watching this show right now, I think it would matter to win the Big 12 in your last year in it. I think it would be cool.
Well, and I think the OU fan in the chat, Stoopsified, he does make a fair point.
Yeah, it's a great point from Stoopsified. Yeah. It's like it would feel good to leave your mark on the conference in the last year. It would also provide an extra narrative in recruiting to show that the program is on the right trajectory.
Catch, how badly do you think the Big 12 doesn't want Texas to go out on a high note this season?
I mean, and OU for that matter. Like,
either one.
Both of them. Keep
an eye on those officials, man. OU and Texas are going to have to band together as some sort of oversight committee to watch these officials, dog. It's like
so, Anwar, I got to give you my epiphany, okay? And then we'll do parting shots and get the hell on out of here. You made a great point that I hadn't really thought about until you made it, and you kind of went right past it once you made the point. But it is funny that the 2023 Longhorns and its head coach are going to be judged by something in 2023 that will never matter again starting as soon as 2024. So if they don't win the conference title, it was a disappointment. They didn't do it again, right? There will be this feeling that it was a major disappointment. That was the bar. It's been the bar for so long. Next year, the bar changes. The playoff goes to 12. The only thing that will start to matter is not whether you won your conference, but did you make the playoff? Why shouldn't we unofficially think of 2023 as like the dry run, the trial, the rehearsal?
Would you have made the top 12? Would you have made the top 12?
Yes. If this season ends, and forget about conference championships for a second. If this season ends and Texas is in the top 12, not after the bowls, after the conference championship games, because it will be the article that everybody writes, right? Trust me, in December when the final rankings come out, there will be a slew of articles that are like, these are the playoff matchups we would have.
Oh, they'll run simulations saying who won via the computer. Yeah.
And then we'll get us hyped up for next year. Yeah. We're going to be like, holy shit, that sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
If Texas finishes the regular season after the Big 12 championship game 11th, maybe that's a successful year, because starting next year, it will be absolutely okay. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's not against a Big 12 schedule.
True, but the bottom line is the bottom line.
Yeah. Because you're right, Kedge. If they don't go to Big 12 championship game, right? But they finish their 8 or 10, then you can't really say Coach Sark's is a hot seat going into the next year 4, because you would say no, he's right where he need to be heading into year 4. All he's got to do is maintain it.
I think we look at the same rule It's there's not an official finish line, right? But next year, if you have a top 5 roster, it's a disappointment if you don't finish in the top 12. We need to be using, I think, as I talk this out, the same standard. It's a trial run. If they do way better, fantastic, right? If they finish inside the top 8, top 6, top 4, fantastic. But I think the minimum bar needs to be 12. Because then you're able to say we would have made in recruiting going into next year's cycle, you would be able to say we would have been in the playoff. And that's what we're aiming for now. And I think that's what matters. So I think I will now look at whether or not this season is a success unofficially if they finish 12th or better in the final.
You're not going to discount it all for the schedule because there's no Georgia on the schedule. There's none of this.
Bottom line, Alex, it's a bottom line business. And this is as easy as it's going to get. So if say they finish 18th and then they're going to face another schedule, it really places some real question marks, I think, going into 2020.
It's just for me, I do some back of the napkin math and just schedule adjust that thing to say, finishing 12th in the big, finishing 12th in the SEC is more like with an SEC schedule is more like finishing 8th or something with the Big 12 schedule.
Your point is not invalid. Yeah. I'm just saying all we have is what we have to work with. And none of the teams in the competing for the top 12 other than SEC teams will be playing an SEC schedule. It is just kind of what it is. And quite frankly, it's the step that Texas needs to take. Finishing in the top 12, I think, would be a sign of program progress, which is ultimately what we're talking about more than anything else. All right, guys, you know what? Does anybody got a parting shot? Onward, did you have a parting shot?
Yeah, I do.
Give it to us.
It's a shot that very few of you guys will care about, but but it means something to me. So I acknowledge that I might lose some. But as UCF gets ready for Big 12 media days this week, as a Florida guy and a USF grad, let me say, well played, USF, because you guys have screwed the pooch so much. They fell behind and never got an on-campus stadium, even though everyone told you how important this was. But they always wanted to play at Raymond James Stadium and never raised the funds. Meanwhile, UCF went out. They were able to get not only a nice stadium, but a beautiful indoor facility and work with that way. The USF makes nothing but bad coaching hires throughout their tenure, just one bad coach after another. And now USF just announced, that they're going to build an on-campus stadium in 2026. Yay! And then, meanwhile, UCF is going into the damn Big 12. And I'm like, well played, leaders of USF. When you had an opportunity to build up this program and could potentially be where UCF is right now, you screwed the pooch in every single area so bad that you have now officially an afterthought that nobody cares about. And you've watched UCF rise from the ashes and go past you and surpass you. And now you're an afterthought in the state of Florida as relates to recruiting. Congratulations. You played yourself. And UCF, props to you. You've done everything the right way. Boo to you, USF, because you've done everything the wrong way.
That was the most Dunlap. I mean, he didn't get really. There wasn't smoke coming out of his ears, Alex.
But just an impassioned rant about somebody about something that no one else gives a shit about. Except
no one cares about.
No, I had an appreciation for it, and the only thing missing was that he just didn't completely lose it. But boy, I could tell. If Anwar were 3 drinks in and he starts that spiel all over again, I bet I bet it's good.
There's a lot more curse words. There's a lot more curse words. There's a lot more everything. Because I remember there was a time that USF was the number 2 team in the country on the Gym 11. Like there was a time that was like supposed to be a program that was on the rise, and all they did was just screw it up. And UCF leaves them in the dust. My program is an afterthought. They're trash.
Paul says you're hurt.
If it didn't take me 15 years to pay that student loan debt off, I would fucking just destroy my whole diploma that's hanging in my wall.
Now we've reached borderline Alex territory. Like,
yes,
we didn't realize there was more, Alex. Like he had a PS. Alex, do you have a parting shot?
Yeah, it's not going to be it's not going to be a rant like on Wars. But mine is just getting back yesterday and heard about the news about 1049 the Horn, about I guess they're going under. Catch, you probably know more about that than I do. I've actually learned about it from you tweeting about it on Twitter.
Thanks.
But I'll say this, man. I don't know. I think fans of every program, they'll say what they will about their local sports personalities and stuff like that. I personally thought it was cool that Texas had a local station in Austin that was, local and they, centered around the Longhorns and had all the Longhorn content, and a lot of people adjacent to the Longhorn media space and reporters and stuff like that, just talking about the team, giving insights that you would not get from the national stations and stuff. And just from a personal perspective, I just like to say to Aaron Hogan, who was was he still the program director over there? I don't even know. He's the manager of the station. Say what you will about the guy. He did, along with Catch to some degree and a guy named Bo Edge to some degree, they gave me my start in radio, which is a big part in my career now. My first show was on 1049. Back then it was ESPN Austin. It wasn't even the Horn yet. After my first year doing my show, Roster Watch, it got syndicated down to ESPN San Antonio, and I think the one up in Waco, to where we were all up and down the I-35 corridor before we got picked up by SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, where I still am to this day after 12 years. But none of that would have happened without E. Hogan, Catch, Bo Edge to a certain degree. Although Bo Edge was kind of getting paid out of this deal, so I can't thank old Bo the same way I could Catch and E. Hogan, who were doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But I just wanted to say, man, the group there at 1049, I know that they probably had some issues. I know that the signal always sucked. There's a million different things you can probably say about it, but I felt like because I'd known for a while, it felt like things were kind of going weird around that station. There was stuff where they went off the air back in March or April for a few days, and you felt like there was something up, and I care a lot about some of the guys over there. I love Chad, and just feel bad for, if those guys, hopefully they land on their feet and everything like that. But I do feel grateful for that station and the start that they gave me in radio, and the fact that I'm still doing it now as really a big part of my job. I have them, and to some degree Catch, who was there at the time, to thank. So, RIP to the Horn, man. And I wish everybody there nothing but the best.
Couple of things. I'm going to use my parting shot to get the super chats that we haven't hit. I want to make sure they get their due. For the record, there's been no official announcement from the radio station about its fate.
Oh, okay. My bad. I've just seen it from you. I've seen it from you. I've seen it from Trey Elling. I've seen it from
So I saw it on Orangebloods. I saw Trey Elling's post on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the Horn official Twitter page.
And they have all these retweets of various hosts that are saying it's my last day. You're going to find me. What am I supposed to do?
I saw those things, Alex, and thought the word was out. I tweeted about it. And apparently I alerted a lot of the world that had not seen those retweets, and I had not seen Trey Elling's tweet. And so I became the guy yesterday that told the world what was happening before the station had told the world what was happening. So I felt bad because I put some people in some uncomfortable positions yesterday, unbeknownst to me. Like, maybe get in control of your station Twitter page.
Yeah, man. And listen, yeah. I mean, to the Horn guys, if any of you guys are listening, if you guys aren't going under, great, man. I'm glad, but it all stays the same, man. I definitely thank E. Hogan. I think Chad's great. You know, all the rest of it, like everything still stands for sure.
My understanding is that an announcement will come at some point.
By the way, Catch, nothing is more OB than nothing reflects you and our lives that everybody else does it. And the moment we do it, we're the only one that's held accountable, and everyone ignores the other tweets and everything else from someone else. It's just
I hadn't even realized what I'd done. A guy that I used to work with at the Horn and buddy of mine, Mark Honig, sent me a text and was like, "Nice job. Your tweet meant I got like 40 calls today. Like my entire day was interrupted." And it was at that moment that I was like, well, why would my tweet have, oh no, kind of it was, you know, we had a show yesterday on where it wasn't like my whole day was focused on that. And then, then it turns out that I let the cat out of the bag, maybe more so than anybody else did. And those are the breaks. Real quick, pin posts. Boy, we really took you guys behind the curtain on that one. Jordan was back-to-back. So, Jordan, I'm glad that I saved my parting shot for you. 100% chance there's going to be some questionable officiating in the Texas and OU games, and they're oddly going to go one way. Yeah. I'm with you, Jordan. Yes.
Yep.
And then he went on to say, I would just like to point out that TCU pulled off what OU couldn't in their first try, win a playoff game. All right. Nice little shit there.
Wow.
At the end.
Wow. Just go ahead. That was a punching a stray, but sure. OU.
By the way, Alex, I pointed out Michigan isn't on the super blue chip list. So like Harbaugh is just a freak of a coach because his roster is way behind everybody else, but it partly explains why TCU was able to beat Michigan. Their rosters are really, really similar, and you wouldn't necessarily know it because of the brand, but great coaching. He's wild. He's not in the top 15 in America for super blue chips, and yet nobody would probably guess that. All right, guys, look, a lot of fun. I tried to keep us under an hour, and like the conversation was just too good. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, like this video, get notifications. Check out our new sponsor, Mojo Insurance. Go to the website, mojoinsurance.agency. Let them help you find the cheapest available insurance so you're saving money, you're paying less. They've got a special Orangebloods section on the website. It's super easy for OB members.
That's my QR.
Shout out to Mojo for their first day as the new sponsor of the Modcast. Jason will be back next week. Guys, great job. We'll see you guys tomorrow. There could be breaking news on the recruiting front, and we've got Drunk Uncle tomorrow night from Dallas, from the Metroplex.
Yeah, baby.
From the site of Big 12 Media Days. You guys have a great rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon.